I'm 85 years old, and I need to tell you about the night that changed everything I thought I knew about God. It wasn't in a church. It wasn't during a prayer. It was in a dark living room during a power outage, sitting next to my wife who didn't know my name anymore. What happened that night changed something inside me that 60 years of Sunday sermons never could. I'm telling you this because most people have faith completely backwards. They think faith is about getting what you pray for. I believe that too. For most of my life, I was wrong, and being wrong almost cost me the most important years I had left. I grew up in a small town in North Carolina, Baptist church every Sunday, Wednesday night Bible study, vacation Bible school every summer. My mother was the kind of woman who had a scripture for every situation. Stubbed your toe? Romans 8:28. Failed a test? Jeremiah 29:11. Her faith was absolute. She never questioned God, not once, at least not that I ever saw. And I absorbed that, not because I had some deep spiritual awakening, but because that's just what you did. You went to church. You said grace before meals. You believed in God the same way you believed the sun would come up. It wasn't something you thought about. It was just there, like the wallpaper. I married Betty in 1966. We were both 26, met at a church picnic naturally. She had this laugh that carried across the whole yard, and I told my buddy right then, I'm going to marry that woman. Took me 8 months to convince her, but I did. We built a good life. Had 2 children. Richard came along in 68, Linda in 71. I worked construction most of my career, eventually started my own small contracting business. Betty taught elementary school for 30 years. We went to church every Sunday, sat in the same pew, 3rd row from the back on the left side, said our prayers every night. Our faith was comfortable, steady, like a warm coat you put on without thinking about it. And here's the thing about comfortable faith. It works fine when life is going well, when the bills are paid and the kids are healthy and nothing terrible is happening. It's easy to thank God when things are good, real easy. But comfortable faith has a problem. It's never been tested. An untested faith is like an umbrella you've never opened in a storm. You assume it works because you've never needed it to. My storm came in 2002. Betty was 62. She started forgetting things. Little things at first, where she put her keys, what she went to the store for. I didn't think much of it. We all forget things at that age, but then it got worse. She'd forget conversations we had that morning. She'd get confused driving to places she'd been going for 30 years. One afternoon, she called me from the grocery store parking lot, crying because she couldn't remember how to get home. The doctor said it was early onset Alzheimer's. I don't know if you've ever had a doctor say something to you that splits your life into before and after, but that's what happened. Everything I knew, everything I expected about our future, our retirement, growing old together the way we planned, it all shattered in one sentence in a doctor's office on a Tuesday afternoon. And I did what my mother taught me to do. I prayed. Lord, did I pray. Every single night I got on my knees and begged God to heal my wife. I quoted scripture. I claimed promises. I fasted. I went to the altar at church and had people lay hands on me. I did everything right, everything I was taught to do when trouble comes. And Betty got worse. Every month a little more of her slipped away. First it was the short-term memory, then it was names. She started calling Richard by my brother's name. Then she forgot Linda's birthday, something she hadn't missed once in 31 years. Then she stopped recognizing our house, the home we'd lived in since 1970. And my prayers went nowhere. That's how it felt, like I was talking to a ceiling. I'd cry out to God, and there was nothing, no healing, no miracle, no sign that anyone was listening at all. By 2005, I was angry, not just frustrated, angry, deep, burning, angry at God, at faith, at every preacher who ever told me that if you believe hard enough, God will move mountains. Well, I believed with everything I had, and my mountain didn't move. My wife was disappearing right in front of my eyes, and God wasn't doing a single thing about it. I stopped going to church. After nearly 40 years of never missing a Sunday, I just stopped. Our pastor came by the house a few times. Friends from the congregation called. I told them all the same thing. I'm fine, just busy taking care of Betty. But I wasn't fine. I was done. Done with God, done with faith, done with all of it. If this was how God treated people who devoted their lives to Him, then I wanted no part of it. The next several years were the hardest of my life. Caring for someone with Alzheimer's is something I wouldn't wish on anyone. It's not like other illnesses where the person is still themselves, just sick. Alzheimer's takes who they are. The woman I fell in love with at that church picnic, the woman who laughed so loud the whole yard could hear, she was vanishing. Some days she'd look at me with these empty eyes, and I'd think, "Where did you go, Betty? Where are you in there?" I hired help during the day so I could still run the business, but every evening and night it was just me and her. I bathed her, I fed her, I changed her clothes, I talked to her even when she stared right through me. Our kids helped when they could. Richard drove down from Virginia most weekends, 5 hours round trip, never complained once. Linda called every single night without fail. But when the house got quiet, it was just me sitting across from a woman who used to know me better than anyone in the world, and now she didn't know me at all. I won't lie to you. There were nights I sat in the kitchen after she'd gone to sleep, and I cried so hard I couldn't breathe, not just for Betty, for myself, for the retirement we planned, the trips we were going to take, the grandchildren she'd never really know. I was grieving a person who was still alive, and there's no casserole or sympathy card for that kind of grief. And then came the night that changed everything. February of 2009. A bad ice storm knocked the power out across half the county. No heat, no lights, nothing. I got blankets, wrapped Betty up on the couch, and sat down beside her. The house was so quiet without the hum of the refrigerator or the television, just darkness and silence and cold. I was exhausted, not just physically tired, exhausted in my soul. 7 years of watching my wife disappear, 7 years of silence from a God I used to trust. I sat there in the dark and I said out loud, "Are you even there? Do you even care about any of this?" Nothing. And then Betty started humming, faint at first, so faint I almost didn't hear it, but there it was, a melody. And it took me a moment, but I recognized it. It is well with my soul. The same hymn we sang together in church every Sunday morning for decades. The same hymn they played at our wedding in 1966. She hadn't spoken a coherent sentence in over a year. She couldn't remember my name, couldn't remember her children's names, couldn't tell you what year it was or where she lived, but somewhere, deep in whatever was left of her mind, that hymn was still there, still alive. She hummed it for maybe 3 or 4 minutes, and I sat there in the dark, tears running down my face, and something cracked open inside me that I still can't fully explain, even now, 16 years later. It wasn't a miracle, not the kind I'd been praying for. Betty didn't suddenly get better. She didn't turn to me and say my name. She kept humming, eyes unfocused, wrapped in a blanket in a cold, dark house. Nothing changed on the outside, but everything changed inside me. Because in that moment I understood something I'd missed for 60 years of going to church. Faith isn't about God giving you what you ask for. It's not a transaction where you put in prayers and get out miracles like some kind of vending machine. Faith is about what remains when everything else is stripped away. Betty's memory was gone. Her ability to function was gone. her awareness of who she was and where she was gone. But that hymn was still there, that expression of something deeper than memory, deeper than cognition. It survived. Love was still there. Something was still there that the disease could not touch. And I realized that's what had been happening all along. Not God ignoring me, not God punishing me, just God being present in the things that endure. In Richard driving 5 hours every weekend without being asked twice. In Linda calling every single night for years. In our neighbor who plowed our driveway every winter without a word. In a hymn from 1966 still living inside a woman who couldn't remember her own name. I'd spent 7 years looking for God in the big dramatic miracle, the healing, the cure, the answered prayer, and I missed him completely. He was in every small, quiet, stubborn act of love happening all around me, and I was too angry to see it. I started going back to church after that night, not because I had answers. I had fewer answers than ever before. But my faith wasn't comfortable anymore. It wasn't the warm coat I put on without thinking. It was something rougher and more honest. Faith that had been dragged through the worst thing I could imagine and come out changed. Not bigger, not louder, just real. Betty passed in 2013. She was 73. By the end, she couldn't walk, couldn't speak, couldn't do anything for herself. But I was there. Every single day, I was there. Not because I was strong or noble, because that night in the dark taught me what it means to show up when there's nothing to gain and everything to give. I'm 85 now, 12 years without Betty, and I miss her every single day. But I don't miss her the way I used to before that night. I don't miss her with anger or bitterness. I miss her with gratitude. 47 years of marriage, 2 children who turned out good. Grandchildren who have her laugh. That is not nothing. That is everything. If you're going through something right now that makes you question everything you believe, I want you to hear me. Don't run from that questioning. Don't stuff it down or pretend it isn't happening. The questioning is where real faith begins. Comfortable faith is easy, but it's shallow. Faith that has been broken apart and put back together, that's the kind that actually holds you when the storm hits. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. I've lived 85 years, and I've learned that telling people what to believe doesn't work anyway. But I will tell you this. Look for the things that remain when everything else falls apart. Look for the love that keeps showing up even when nobody's watching. Look for the hymn that survives when memory doesn't. That's where you'll find whatever it is you're searching for. I believe that's where God lives. But even if you call it something else, it's still there. It has always been there. My wife taught me more about faith by humming a song she shouldn't have remembered than 60 years of sermons ever did, and I almost missed it because I was too angry to pay attention. Don't wait until you're 85 to learn that faith isn't about having answers. It's about showing up in the dark even when you can't see a thing, and trusting that something good is still there. If this meant something to you, I'd appreciate it if you'd share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment, tell me what you believe and why. Subscribe, because I've got more to say, and at 85, I'm not sure how many chances I'll have left to say it. Thank you for sitting with me and listening to this old man's story. It means more than you know.